Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Coming Home Project. That's what I've decided to call it, the Coming Home Project, because what I want to talk about are all the many ways that we can learn how to come home to ourselves, come home to our truth, and come home to our bodies, which I believe house our deeper truth. And today I have Jill Grunewald, who is a holistic nutrition and hormone coach. And specifically, she's very wonderful and great in dealing with hormonal, as I said, hormonal issues, but also Hashimoto's and adrenal fatigue and all those kind of big issues that so many of us women deal with. So welcome, Jill.
Thank you.
I'm so happy to have you here. And the reason why I wanted you here is that you've had your own struggles with your body, and not just having your body kind of go on strike, but also kind of coming back to her. So give me just a quick synopsis, and everyone who's watching, of what went down with your body. When did you have to kind of make a switch in terms of rethinking about her and kind of coming home to her?
It's a great question. So I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's, which is autoimmune hypothyroidism, in January of 2008. And several years prior to that, I had been diagnosed as borderline hypothyroid, but it just went in one ear and out the other because I didn't have raging symptoms. It was just a normal physical checkup, and they happened to check my thyroid. And the doctor didn't really give me any instructions or say, we need to follow up on this. And then a few years went by, and I didn't really have a big, explosion of symptoms. When I look back now, I think, okay, maybe there were some signs that I missed. But in January of 2008, I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's, and it was pretty fortunate that I was, because I wasn't in that appointment for thyroid problems. I wasn't complaining of, weight gain or lots of hair loss or some of the common symptoms of hypothyroidism. And I was just fortunate enough that this doctor had the wherewithal to check my thyroid antibodies. And he said, you kind of have a raging case of Hashimoto's. Your antibodies are really high. And it almost took my breath away. I knew very little about Hashimoto's at that time. A friend of mine had been diagnosed with Hashimoto's, so I knew a little bit about it. But just that whole world of autoimmunity scared me. And the diagnosis was a shock, especially because I had been not completely asymptomatic, but I didn't really have very many symptoms. But I had a lot of symptoms of adrenal burnout, and we can talk about that. But as far as the Hashimoto's goes specifically, it was a big surprise, and it scared me.
So being diagnosed, because I've had my own diagnosis with ulcerative colitis when I was 20, what was your initial thought about your body when you got hit with the diagnosis? What was the immediate, thought for you?
My immediate thought was, I can fix this myself. Yeah. I'm going to do this myself. Yep. And he was literally writing a prescription for Synthroid, and I said, no, thank you. I'm going to figure this out. Yeah. Now, I have a long family history of autoimmunity. So, from a general perspective, I knew what autoimmune conditions did. They attack different systems of the body. So in the case of Hashimoto's, you have antibodies that are attacking the thyroid. In the case of alopecia, you have antibodies that are attacking the hair follicle, et cetera, et cetera. There's over 80 different types of autoimmunity. So given that I had a family history of it, I did have a sense of what it was, but still it was, like I said, a surprise. And my initial reaction was, I'm going to figure this out. So I walked out of there with a doctor very frustrated with me, saying, you'll never figure this out.
Yeah.
So, shock, but determination.
Yes. I so appreciate that, because I had the exact same response. Like, I'm not going on your drugs, which may or may not do anything. I'm going to heal myself. And for me at the time, I was like, I'm going to heal myself with food. And what I've been playing around with recently is kind of noticing that there are different levels of healing. That, when I first started healing myself with food, I noticed that I was going about it in the same aggressive way that I think probably made me sick in the first place. And I don't know if you experienced that or if you've had that, but when you're like, that's it, I'm healing myself, and you're so determined that you begin to see positive results, but then also you realize that you're gripping that just as hard as you were gripping other things before you were diagnosed.
Yes. And I tell my clients not to grip. It's funny that you use that word, because I'm always saying to people, don't grip. Like that whole like hypervigilant sort of gripping can be somewhat counterproductive to our healing.
Yes, I completely agree. And yet it's so natural, because we are, my women, I'm sure your women too, they're like, give me the plan. Give me the freaking plan, and I will stick to it forever and ever until I die. And that's great, except for the fact that actually that can cause its own set of what I would call mislistenings. You are so locked into your new routine that you're no longer listening to your body, who may need an adjustment, or who may need other things looked at besides just locking in on no sugar, no wheat, no dairy thing.
Right.
Yeah. So you were dealing with the hypothyroidism, but really it was more of the adrenal fatigue that kind of got you on it.
Yeah, I mean, when I look back, and even today, it's my own personal work to not let my adrenals get burnt out. And I think I just, in my 20s and 30s, I was just full speed ahead, go, go, go. I pushed a lot. I did a lot of great things for my body too. I worked out relatively regularly. I probably wasn't as good about it as I should have been, but, I did take pretty good care of myself, but there was a lot of pushing and like being really hard on myself, perfectionist tendencies, shooting on myself, not giving myself a break.
Yeah.
And so even though for the vast majority of people, the root cause of hypothyroidism is the Hashimoto's, the autoimmunity, there's such a tight relationship between the adrenals and the thyroid. So you always have to look at both systems. If someone's hypothyroid, yes, you look at the immune system, but you also have to look at adrenal health. And the adrenals they're like the shock absorbers for life.
Yeah.
Right? So if someone's had a lot of stress or a history of being really hard on themselves, it's just going to up the ante on that adrenal dysfunction. And, to your point about really kind of tuning in and listening to the body and not obsessing over every little morsel that you put in your mouth, because the vast majority of healing and nourishing the adrenals is all around lifestyle, stress reduction, listening to the body,
I so appreciate what you're saying, and I feel like we need a new language around stress and stress reduction, because everyone's like, oh, whatever, I'm stressed, and then we keep moving. I'm so stressed out, and let me show you everything I'm going to do. But then we're so attached to everything that we do. I call it the cult of accomplishment, that we're just, it's how we know that we're good. It's how we know that we're okay. We know that we're good and okay by what we weigh and what we eat and what we get done. And I think that is a recipe for burnt out adrenals, absolutely. And so what's one thing that you tell your clients when it comes to reducing stress? Really, because I think this is so, as I call it, it's a sticky wicket. It's so hard to let ourselves slow because our value and our worth is wrapped up in it.
Yes, for a lot of people, yes, that's so true. So I want to make a comment first before I answer your question. This is really quick. What I just want to say is when people have adrenal dysfunction and the adrenals are overproducing cortisol and adrenaline, it makes us push ourselves harder. So people fall into this trap of, yeah, I have adrenal dysfunction, but the hormones that they're overproducing lend themselves to pushing harder. More perfectionist tendencies, more list-making tendencies, and being really hard on yourself if you don't cross everything off of your list at the end of the week. Like, so there is this sort of feedback loop where if the adrenals go unaddressed and that overproduction of stress hormones goes unaddressed, we end up exacerbating the problem because those hormones make us do a lot of the things that further stress the adrenals.
Yes.
So,
thank you for sharing that. That's incredible.
I feel in really calming that hypervigilant adrenal stress hormone response is breath work, frankly. And yes, there is the dietary component to nourishing and supporting the adrenals, but breath work, as you likely know, switches the nervous system from the sympathetic fight or flight response, which so many of us are in constantly, to the parasympathetic rest and digest response, or some people call it the feed and breed response. And, you know, a lot of my clients will say, well, I'm not a meditator. You know, I've tried it and I just can't turn off my mind, which tells me that they need even more adrenal support. But what I say is that's fine. You don't have to be a meditator. You could do a simple, very short, ridiculously easy breath exercise a few times a day. You know, you don't have to have your eyes closed. You don't have to be sitting in the lotus position. There's some really simple breath exercises I can share with you that you can even do behind the wheel of a car that will not only give you immediate calming and grounding and, you know, comfort, but the more you do them, they have a cumulative effect on your nervous system, and it switches us from that fight or flight response to the rest and digest response, and that calms down the adrenals. It tells the adrenals, there's no threat here.
Yeah.
You can chill out.
Yeah. That's so, you know, it's funny that you mentioned in the car, because I have a lot of my clients write on a little Post-it note and stick it in their car, in their bathroom, and on their computer at work. Breathing? ? Like, are you breathing? Let's remember to do that, because we really do forget, and it is so simple, and it's simple to the fact where I found it to be, I was just so resistant. I wanted my project to be bigger. Like, if I'm going to heal myself, like, just breathing, how boring. But it's actually not. It's so exactly what needs to happen.
Yes.
Yes, exactly.
And it was, you know, it took me a while, too, to make it a regular part of my life. You know, I was kind of like you, like, just keep going, you know. So,
yes.
We health coaches aren't perfect either. I mean, we need to hear things 2 and 3 times, too, before it becomes a part of our regular routine.
Yeah. The other day, I've been working on my own attachment to the cult of accomplishment and all of that. And the other day, you know, I've realized this before that I'm hard on myself. But just the other day, I realized, again, I was like, I am being awful to myself right now. And I mentioned to a girlfriend, and she's like, duh. Like, but again, I had to remember that, like, again and again, there are so many layers of this healing and coming back home and trusting what the body has to say, and then letting yourself do the work, you know, without judgment.
Yes.
Which I think is critical and not easy. So, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to take us down a different path. So if you had something to say on this.
No, go ahead.
Okay. So I wanted to know, did you ever struggle with kind of how your body looked and or any sort of body image stuff before your diagnosis?
Yes.
Yeah. Yes, I confess. Okay, good. And how or did that shift in kind of having to heal certain parts of your body that were going on strike?
Well, first I would say a lot of people would probably think I'm ridiculous for having body image issues. I'm relatively thin. You know, I'm tall if I do put on a few pounds, I carry it well. You know, people consider me thin. And I used to be a runner, not a hardcore runner, but just a regular, 3 miles at a run kind of runner.
Mm-hmm.
Just to relieve stress and, manage my weight. And I guess that's part of the reason, I think I kind of alluded to this earlier, but it's part of the reason why I was surprised by my Hashimoto's diagnosis, because I was pretty thin at that time. So I did end up putting on more weight after my diagnosis, even though, I had gone gluten-free and I had gone through an elimination provocation diet to sleuth out my food sensitivities. And I lost a little bit of weight in the short term. And my Hashimoto's went into remission, but I did put on some weight. And that's largely because I wasn't as active. Mm-hmm. And so my Hashimoto's went into remission and my thyroid was actually okay, but my adrenals were continuing to get amped up and burnt out. And, we all know that cortisol is the belly fat hormone. And, so I think my weight gain over the last few years has been largely related to, two things. Not nourishing my own adrenals as much as I should have been, not walking my talk to the extent that I should have been. And also, I just was a lot less active. I was a lot less active.
Yeah.
And frankly, I was working really hard to build my business. And I know that sounds like a lame excuse. Like you would think, you should have taken time for self-care. And I was taking time for self-care in a lot of other ways. It's just that my physical activity kind of went by the wayside. But that has changed the last few months. I'm back on track, and I'm doing a completely different type of exercise than I've ever done before, and I feel great. It's incredible. And so I've turned it around. And
you've turned what around?
From inactivity to activity.
Oh, I understand.
I should have specified. And I feel better in my body than I have felt in years. And I'm 44, so I'm here to tell you that you can have Hashimoto's and hypothyroidism and still fire up your metabolism and, not go out there and kill yourself trying to, burn fat, because the whole calories in, calories out mentality is just BS.
It doesn't work. I actually want to hit upon something that you said about self-care, because again, I have a really, I don't like the idea of self-care, because I feel like it can very, very easily become something that we have to do, another thing on our to-do list.
And that's why it wasn't getting done for me.
Exactly.
And then if it's to-do list.
Right. It's on the to-do list. We don't get it done, and then we feel guilty about it. And then we're in this whole big cycle again of like, if I really cared about myself, I would just be doing this. Well, I obviously don't care about myself. What's wrong with me? All of these things. And then your food is like, I need cookies. I mean, I don't know. I have to go on a juice cleanse because I ate gluten. It's like a whole thing. And, I don't know what kind of exercise you are doing now, but one of the things I have found to be helpful is kind of seeing what's going on and approaching yourself with such gentleness. It sounds like you're not running. You weren't like, all right, that's it. I'm fat. I have to hit the pavement and start running. You found an exercise system or a movement system that your body actually rejoices in, which is so important, because I think when it comes to, I don't even like the word exercise. I like the word body movement. I know it sounds ridiculous, but
I hear you. I hear you. I agree.
But I think that with exercise, we stop listening to what our body says, and we get into a very punishing thing of this is how I manage my weight. This is how I keep myself in control and under control, versus what's the way that my body really wants to move and feels nourished by it. So are you going to let us in on the ways that you exercise or move your body now?
Yeah, I will. And I just, to your point about the whole punishment piece, I didn't get active again because I wanted to lose weight. I told my husband, I don't care if I don't lose any weight. I'd like to lose about 15 pounds, but I don't really care if I do or not. I just need to do this for myself. I just need to get stronger. Like, I just want to be more fit. It's not about weight loss. And the weight just came off really fast because I think I wasn't obsessing about the pounds. I was approaching it from a place of, I want to do this for myself. Like, enough is enough. I haven't been active enough. And I very much approached it from a place of, and actually the trainer that I'm working with says, on the banner on her Facebook page, it says, I don't have to do this. I get to do this. Like, it's a privilege to be able to move my body.
Yeah.
So I really changed my mindset around movement.
Yeah.
And I've done yoga classes over the last few years. Like, it's not like I've done nothing. And we live, next to really close to the Mississippi River. And, it's not like, we walk and bike, but I haven't had a dedicated movement practice. And so what I'm doing now, it might surprise some people, but it's mostly body weight, kettlebell, like lifting weights instead of the traditional cardio.
Yeah.
My trainer and I joke all the time. It's like, you can totally get a cardiovascular workout from, working with kettlebells. It's a great workout. Mm-hmm. And my workouts aren't that long.
Yeah.
I'm only doing them 3 times a week, and I'm not spending a ton of time doing it, and I don't have a ton of time. So anything that you can spend a little bit of time on and get really good results is A-okay in my book.
Yeah, I completely agree. Well, Jill, thank you so much for taking the time and sharing your story. And obviously, you're so incredibly knowledgeable in terms of the thyroid and adrenals, and such a wonderful resource for my women and the women that you serve. So thank you so much. And remind me again your website.
It's healthfulelements.com. It's HEALTHFUL. A lot of people think I say helpful, like HELP.
Oh, got it.
But it's healthfulelements.com.
Healthfulelements.com. Well, thank you. You're amazing.
Jamie, thank you so much. This has been fun.
Good. Have a wonderful day.
You too. Bye-bye.